it gives me great pleasure to introduce my colleague, but more importantly, my friend, the distinguished gentleman from Chicago, Congressman Luis Gutierrez.
Thank you so much for that very warm and generous introduction. I first want to say that I was looking forward to meeting State Senator Teresa Ruiz tonight. It's always a pleasure. I have two wonderful daughters back at home, Omaira and Jessica, and I can only tell her that I always look for role models for those two wonderful women. And you know, when we're going to achieve true parity and true justice and true fairness in our community, the Latino community, and that's when women and men walk equally, hand in hand, leading our community. That's truly when we want to win. Mi amiga, que yo pensé que era de Nueva York, esta noche aprendí que ella es de Nueva Jersey. Pero ella es de todos nosotros, de todas las partes de los Estados Unidos, Lilian Rodriguez. It's so wonderful to share the podium with you here this evening. What can I say? Let's give a round of applause for the President of this wonderful institution, and this wonderful President for hosting us here this evening. Quiero decirle gracias a la universidad, a su presidente. Vamos a darle un aplauso por estar aquí con nosotros. En el Senado, de 100, la inmensa mayoría de los días, en la inmensa mayoría de los días, horas, momentos, minutos, solamente tenemos una sola voz que se levanta en defensa de nuestra comunidad y de nuestros intereses. There are many days when there is only one voice. There are many minutes, moments, hours when there's only one voice. And anytime I have an opportunity to stand with him and not let him stand alone, I will take that opportunity. And that's why I'm here in New Jersey tonight. Porque él, como yo, nuestros padres vinieron aquí sin entender el idioma, pero con esperanzas de un mejor porvenir y buscando libertad y mejor oportunidad. Así llegaron los padres de él. Ojalá que tuviéramos fotos de los apartamentos en los cuales nosotros vivíamos cuando nos criamos. Apartamentos quizá donde vivían los pobres, ¿verdad? Donde vivía la clase trabajadora. ¿Ah? Pero como decía José Martí, con los pobres quiero mi suerte echar. Vamos gente afortunados con su suerte con los pobres. Con los negros, aquí en nuestro país. So we both grew up with the same existence. And I remember what it was like growing up Puerto Rican in Chicago. I remember first grade, and I remember 1A and 1B, and me and my fellow Puerto Ricans in 1C. I do remember. I remember sadly the parchisi boards and the checkers that they would give to the Puerto Ricans who would arrive. Tú sabes, esos jibaritos que llegaban de Puerto Rico sin hablar con esa mancha de plátano. Y llegaban a los salones y las maestras no veían esperanza ni oportunidad en los jóvenes. I was born in Chicago, so I could make do because I had a few English skills. And so that's how we grew up. And so what could we do less than remember? Simplemente Robert Menendez y Luis Gutierrez tienen que recordar sus propias experiencias aquí en este país y no darle la espalda a las oportunidades que pueden tener estas generaciones en el presente. Because I just want you to think as we think of our community and its growth. I mean, if we were the 1850s or the 1860s, and we were in Boston, we'd open up a newspaper, and they'd be saying those dirty, filthy people who come ignorant to this country, who come here to subvert it, and they'd be writing about the Irish. And if it was the turn of the century, we'd open up a New York Times, that venerable newspaper, and we'd read an editorial, only by the rule of law would we ever hope to contain these people, they'd be referring to Italian immigrants to this country. And we wonder, as we look back, and I'm sure everybody in this audience piensa, what was the big deal? What was all the fuss about as we think about Italian and German and Irish immigrants? But we know, sadly, that that was the history that they confronted of discrimination. You know, they were wrong about the Irish. They were wrong about the Italians. And they were wrong about the immigrants today in this great country. And we will write the history together. And it will come happily one day when everybody will ask, what was the fuss all about that? But you know, in Growing American Roots, you understand when Bob Menendez writes that simply growing in numbers, right, does not mean we're going to grow in power unless we translate those numbers to real power. And that's why those of us that do have the ability to vote, the ability to organize, the freedom to act and interact and organize, have a responsibility to do so each and every day. If we wish to do as the Irish, to do as the Italian, to do as past immigrant groups have done. ¿Por qué? Porque no se olvidaron. Tú sabes, yo estoy aquí esta noche y yo pienso, qué lindo es pensar en ese pelotero que yo veía como niño, moreno, oscuro él. Y yo y mi papá íbamos a verlo allá cuando jugaban contra los Cachorros. Y llegaba ese gigante puertorriqueño, ese gigante pelotero, Roberto Menendez. And many of us think of him and say, wow, what a great left fielder. Recuerda que en tercera base no se movía. Nadie se atrevía a llevarse. Porque esa mano que él tenía, ese brazo que él tenía. And think about it, after winning a World Series, at the height of his career. Piensa en un pelotero hoy, ganándose lo que se ganan esos peloteros hoy. Con toda la fama, ganándose una mundial, serie mundial. Siendo el jugador más valioso. And what did Roberto Clemente do? When in Managua, Nicaragua, he didn't say to himself, ellos no son boricua, yo no conozco quiénes son esa gente. He didn't write a check. He didn't call for a press conference. What did he do? He went throughout the island of Puerto Rico and he gathered medicine and he gathered food and he gathered clothing. And he said, yo tengo la responsabilidad de llevarle este fruto del pueblo de Puerto Rico directamente a los más necesitados en Managua, Nicaragua. No fue como él vivió tanto su vida como pelotero, pero como dio su vida en muerte ayudando a otros latinoamericanos. So the examples are there for all of us to see in all of the facets of our lives. About those who give so that others might prosper, might grow, might have a sense of fairness. You know, I was thinking about Hispanic Heritage Month in mi propia Hispanidad, porque todos nosotros tenemos pues como una anécdota, ¿verdad? Una idiosincrasia de nuestro momento en la vida. And I was born and raised in Chicago, so, you know, English was my first language. And I remember the bilingualism of my home, ¿verdad? Vete a la tienda a comprar leche. Can you give me an extra nickel for a pot, Mom? Pero cómo no lo entendíamos, ¿verdad? Mi mamá y mi papá hablando puro español y yo únicamente hablando inglés. Y ellos siempre en su sueño, como migrantes de este país, querían regresar a Puerto Rico en un momento. Es el sueño, ¿verdad? Quiero regresar a esa islita, ¿verdad? Quiero ir allá al campo, quiero ir allá con mi gente, donde no siento pues los ojos como sospechosos de mucha gente, donde no se cuestiona mi acento ni cómo hablo, donde se me quiere por quien yo soy. So they wanted to go back, but they never let me in on it. So year in and year out, we kept the bilingualism up. And I went back to Puerto Rico, and I remember being a sophomore in high school, which actually was the first year of high school in Puerto Rico. They started in 10th grade. So I showed up and yo tenía el profesor Hernández. Lo primero que aprendí que la H es muda y que las mujeres son